Hello, and welcome back to True Life Knowledge, the YouTube channel where we study the topics and the knowledge that matters for the real life. And today we're going to talk about Aristotle, the ancient philosopher, a wise man, a man who has done great things and who has been the mentor to Alexander the Great, and who has written a lot of stuff. And he was forgotten, but he became interesting again when in the Renaissance, when the ancient Greek philosophy was rediscovered. And today we're going to read and maybe comment his work, Politics. And let us begin. Book 1. Every state is a community of some kind, and every community is established with a view to some good. For everyone always acts in order to obtain that which they think good. It is a logical reasoning that everything has been made for some good in mind. For example, everything, like, the car has been built for good ideas in mind. So this is why he's talking about community. But if all communities aim at some good, the state or political community, which is the highest of all and which embraces all the rest, aims at good in a greater degree than any other and at the highest good. Some people think that the qualifications of a statesman, king, householder, and master are the same, and that they differ not in kind but only in the number of their subjects. For example, the ruler over a few is called a master, over more the manager of a household, over a still larger number a statesman or king, as if there were no difference between a great household and a small state. The distinction which is made between the king and the statesman is as follows. When the government is personal, the ruler is a king. When, according to the rules of the political science, the citizens rule and are ruled in turn, then he is called a statesman. But all this is a mistake, as will be evident to anyone who considers the matter according to the method which has hitherto guided us. As in other departments of science, so in politics, the compound should always be resolved into the simple elements or least part of the whole. We must therefore look at the elements of which the state is composed, in order that we may see in what the different kinds of rule differ from one another, and whether any scientific result can be attained about each one of them. Book 2. Paragraph 2. He who thus considers things in their first growth and origin, whether a state or anything else, will obtain the clearest view of them. In the first place, there must be a union of those who cannot exist without each other, namely of male and female, that the race may continue. And this is a union which is formed, not a choice, but because in common with other animals and with plants, men can have a natural desire to leave behind them an image of themselves, and of natural ruler and subject, that both may be preserved. For that which can foresee by the exercise of mind is by nature lord and master, and that which can with its body give effect to such foresight is a subject, and by nature a slave. Hence master and slave have the same interest. Now nature has distinguished between the female and the slave. For she is not niggardly like the smith who fashions the Delphian knife for many uses, she makes each thing for a single use, and every instrument is best made when intended for one and not for many uses. But among barbarians, no distinction is made between women and slaves, because there is no natural ruler amongst them. They are a community of slaves, male and female. That is why the poet said, "It is meet that Hellenes should rule over barbarians," as if they thought that the barbarian and the slave were by nature one. Out of these two relationships, the first thing to arise is the family, and Hesiod is right when he says, "First house and wife, and an ox for the plough." For the ox is the poor man's slave. The family is the association established by nature for the supply of man's everyday wants, and the members of it are called by Charon's companions of the cupboard, and by Epimenides the Cretan, companions of the manger. But when several families are united, and the association aims at something more than supply of daily needs, the first society to be formed is the village. And the most natural form of the village appears to be that of a colony from the family, composed of the children and grandchildren who are said to be suckled with the same milk. And this is the reason why Hellenic states were originally governed by kings, because the Hellenes were under royal rule before they came together, as the barbarians still are. Every family is ruled by the eldest, and therefore in the colonies of the family the kingly form of government prevailed, because they were of the same blood, as Homer says, "Each one gives law to his children and to his wives." For they lived dispersedly, as was the manner in ancient times. That is why men say that the gods have a king, because they themselves either are or were in ancient times under the rule of a king. For they imagine not only the forms of the gods, but their ways of life to be like their own. When several villages are united in a single complete community, large enough to be nearly or quite self-sufficing, the state comes into existence, originating in the bare needs of life, and continuing in existence for the sake of a good life. And therefore, if the earlier forms of society are natural, so is the state, for it is the end of them, and the nature of a thing is its end. For what each thing is when fully developed, we call its nature, whether we are speaking of a man, a horse, or a family. Besides, the final cause and end of a thing is the best, and to be self-sufficing is the end and the best. So maybe he's talking even about self-reliance. Hence, it is evident that the state is a creation of nature, and that man is by nature a political animal. And he who by nature, and not by mere accident, is without a state, is either a bad man or above humanity. He is like the tribeless, lawless, heartless one, whom Homer denounces. The natural outcast is forthwith a lover of war. He may be compared to an isolated piece at drought. Now that man is more of a political animal than the beasts or any other gregarious animals is evident. Nature, as we often say, makes nothing in vain, and man is the only animal who has the gift of speech. And whereas mere voice is but an indication of pleasure or pain, and is therefore found in other animals, for their nature attains to the perception of pleasure and pain, and the intimation of them to another, and no further. The power of speech is intended to set forth the expedient and inexpedient, and therefore likewise the just and the unjust. And it is a characteristic of man that he alone has any sense of good and evil, of just and unjust, and the like. And the association of living beings who have this sense makes a family and a state. Further, the state is by nature clearly prior to the family and to the individual, since the whole is of necessity prior to the part. For example, if the whole body be destroyed, there will be no foot or hand, except homonymiously, as we might speak of a stone hand, for when destroyed the hand will be no better than that. But things are defined by their function and power, and we ought not to say that they are the same when they no longer have their proper quality, but only that they are homogeneous. The proof that the state is a creation of nature and prior to the individual is that the individual, when isolated, is not self-sufficing, and therefore he is like a part in relation to the whole. But he who is unable to live in society, or who has no need because he is sufficient for himself, must be either a beast or a god. He is no part of a state. Interesting. It is like later on that Diogenes used this allegory even himself. A social instinct is implanted in all men by nature, and yet he who first founded the state was the greatest of benefactors. For man, when perfected, is the best of animals, but when separated from law and justice, he is the worst of all, since armed injustice is the more dangerous, and he is equipped at birth with arms, meant to be used by intelligence and excellence, which he may use for the worst ends. That is why, if he has not excellence, he is the most unholy and the most savage of animals, and the most full of lust and gluttony. But justice is the bond of men in states. For the administration of justice, which is the determination of what is just, is the principle of order in political society. 3. Seeing then that the state is made up of households, before speaking of the state we must speak of the management of the household. The parts of household management correspond to the persons who compose the household, and a complete household consists of slaves and freemen. Now we should begin by examining everything in its fewest possible elements, and the first and fewest possible parts of a family are master and slave, husband and wife, father and children. We have therefore to consider what each of these three relations is and ought to be. I mean the relation of master and servant, the marriage relationship. The conjunction of man and wife has no name of its own. And thirdly, the paternal relation. And there is another element of a household, the so-called art of getting wealth, which according to some is identical with household management, according to others, a principal part of it. The nature of this art will also have to be considered by us. Let us first speak of master and slave, looking to the needs of practical life and also seeking to attain some better theory of their relation than exists at present. For some are the opinion that the rule of a master is a science, and that the management of a household and the mastership of slaves and the political and the royal rule, as it was saying at the onset, are all the same. Others affirm that the rule of a master over slaves is contrary to nature, and that the distinction between slave and freeman exists by convention only, and not by nature, and being an interference with nature is therefore unjust. Interesting. So this is part 1 of this series on politics by Aristotle. I hope you enjoyed and that you are enjoying the improvement of my English language. So take great care until the next time, and see you soon.